Reith, it is time to give you a hefty dose of AIDS. With this issue of Incredible Hulk, issue 420, In the Shadow of AIDS. This is a well-intentioned story meant to highlight and raise awareness of AIDS, or rather how AIDS affects people. And it's written by a writer that I wouldn't really have ever considered to take the subject seriously. This is by David Peter, with artwork by Gary Franklin. The character we are seeing is who this issue focuses on, Jim Wilson. Jim Wilson is an odd travelling companion of Hulk. He was introduced in the Bronze Age of comics in Incredible Hulk 131, which also featured Iron Man, and has a quite well-known cover. Jim Wilson was a runaway kid who was living on the streets in LA, and he was struggling to get by. He was squatting in an abandoned apartment building that was about to be knocked down, and it was there where he met Hulk, and the two bonded and became friends over their shared feelings of being an outsider and having it rough. Jim Wilson was created by Roger Thompson and Herb Trimfeld, and was very clearly meant to be a replacement for Dickie Jones, who had a year earlier become a main character over in Captain Marvel's, the real one, Marvel. Jim is at a protest about AIDS. There is a school that is refusing to allow an HIV-positive child to come to school. And we have a subplot which I don't like. Hulk's love interest, Jennifer Connelly, or Liv Tyler, she is working at a Samaritans type call centre. And I don't like that plot A and plot B both concern AIDS. It's too convenient that both Hulk and his missus are having separate stories, both about AIDS. I think it would work better, maybe, if the two plot lines were split into two stories. Have this be a backup story. Let it be set at a different time, not parallel with Hulk also dealing with AIDS. We have... I just made it sound like Hulk gets AIDS. He doesn't. Hulk arrives at the protests, and this scene is excellent. He is really angry because Jim was Earth, and it's one of those great moments that David Peter would often hit on with this version of Hulk. Hulk would be repositioned as the calm and rational one. There's a cop who is blindly firing his gun at Hulk, and Hulk explains how stupid that is, because it could ricochet and hurt an innocent. But the thing that makes this issue so nice is that Hulk really does care about his friends. The thing is, Jim Wilson never mattered much as a character. Initially, the only thing people would do with him is have him get Earth, and then you would have a cover or an image of Hulk holding his body. That was the majority of his original appearances. Someone for Hulk to get angry over being Earth. He disappeared from the book quite quickly. He did make a return though, during the Royce Sternum era on Incredible Hulk. Royce Sternum brought him back and featured him very prominently in the series. Although if I remember, Lenny Wen also writes some of those stories too. And it was Lenny Wen's idea to tie Jim Wilson to another Marvel character with the same surname. Jim Wilson was better utilised in those stories as a companion and a friend to Hulk, rather than a constant victim to feed Hulk's rage. I remember there's a whole subplot with him and this stupid stage magician guy. The big moment for Jim Wilson was in the Corporation saga, which was a Hulk and Captain America crossover story penned by Royce Sternum and Slums Mackenzie. It was tying up a few years of dead ends in both Hulk's title and more so in Captain America's title. Nice page here showing a bunch of the players involved in that wrap-up. Jim Wilson is there. Both A and Falcon Man are being held hostage by the evil corporation, and it's up to Captain America, Hulk, and the newly minted Kazar to save the day. At the end of the story, Jim Wilson, upon seeing Falcon Man, reveals to the reader that A and Falcon Man are related. He is Falcon Man's nephew, but I swear there is a comic where they are erroneously said to be cousins. This was what Lenny Wen came up with years ago, and what Royce Sternum followed through on. I was going to gripe and moan about two characters with the same surname being revealed as related, but then I realised that it actually came about in a way where it was important to the resolution of the Corporation story arc, and I think that was its main purpose, rather than needlessly making the world feel small. The sad thing is, after we find out that Jim Wilson is gone from Hulk's book, he doesn't appear again anywhere for years. Royce Sternum seemed to consciously replace Jim Wilson with a new character called Fred Sloan, who is... Fred Sloan is a prick, I'll just say it. Fred Sloan is not a very likeable character. Our other story is Jennifer/Liv dealing with a call from a man who has discovered he has HIV and he is suicidal, and she is unfairly saddled with keeping this despondent man from killing himself. Hulk brings Jim Wilson to the Pants Brigade's headquarters, where he can receive the best medical care possible. And it is here where Hulk is faced with a truth that he didn't want to accept or look more into. Let's go back to Incredible Hulk 388, also by David Peter, with artwork by Dale Cooper. An issue that also introduces the villain Speed Freak, who I believe is one of Hulk's best underutilised villain ideas. After not appearing since the Corporation saga in the 80s, Jim Wilson showed up for a story, and I do not respect at all how Dale Cooper was drawn him. It's insulting, and just to clarify if you didn't know, Dale Cooper now is firmly aligned with the right-wing grifters. We find out in that issue that Jim Wilson is HIV positive. I am less keen on that issue and its treatment of the subject, and how the artist is making Jim Wilson look a stereotype. For me, The beauty of this story arc has been that we never do find out how Jim Wilson contracted the disease. That's also adding to my dislike of Dale Cooper, drawing him in a way that the script never once acknowledges or makes reference to. We learn that Jim Wilson isn't just HIV positive, he has, this is straight from the issue, he has full-blown AIDS. It is a very emotional and a very raw issue, but I can't help but get a chuckle whenever anyone says, full-blown AIDS. Jim Wilson is dying, and this really is a lovely little farewell story. Hulk is so supportive and caring for his friends. And we have a moral quandary presented where Jim Wilson suggests that Hulk give him a blood transfusion because Hulk's gamma irradiated blood might be able to battle the virus. Hulk is reluctant to do this because he fears creating another gamma monster. But Jim Wilson is his friend, and Jim really needs this. Jim is going to die otherwise. And there is this other lovely bit where Jim asks Hulk if Hulk was in a jam and he needed one partner to pull him out of it, who would he want? Dickie Jones or Jim Wilson? We check in briefly with the Pants Brigade. One of them is gay, so we needed a page somewhere focusing on him in this issue. I will explain the Pants Brigade in another video one day. Not a fan. One of those teams the writer was into more than any reader. Hulk agrees to do the transfusion, but the twist is, he hasn't really. It's not actually his blood that they are using. He just wants to give Jim some sense of hope at the end. But Jim, he actually figures it out, and he decides to not let Hulk know that he has worked it out. Earlier, he also apologised for putting Hulk on the spot and forcing him to make an unfair decision about the blood transfusion. Jim Wilson dies on this page. Jim Wilson dies from his full-blown AIDS. It's heartbreaking, and Hulk's grief is dealt with mostly through the visual of him walking straight through a wall. Curtain call for Jim Wilson. He never appears again, outside of maybe flashbacks. There's one other thing I want to talk about, which is there is one little extra bit of this Jim Wilson plotline in Incredible Hulk 445, an Onslaught Man tie-in. Hulk is with the Avengers and the other heroes in that, and a lot of them are distrustful of him. But Falcon Man is on his side and very sympathetic towards him. Falcon Man explains to Hawkeye that he owes Hulk a lot for helping his nephew in his final days, and Hulk helped a lot more than we see in this issue. Another thing we also find out is that between panels in this issue, Hulk did arrange a phone call between Jim and Falcon Man, so Jim did get to say goodbye to his uncle. There's one last piece of Jim Wilson lore, and that is Gamma Corps. One of them is Gideon Wilson, who is Jim Wilson's dad, and he blames Hulk for Jim Wilson's death. Typical shite. I think it's that series where the cousin thing comes from even. We also have our other plotline to resolve, and this too is a downer. The guy kills himself by parking his car on train tracks. Now, we have testimonies here from a lot of comic book pros about how AIDS has manifested in their lives. They are nearly all sincere. People who have lost someone or they know someone with the virus. But in the middle of all this is one writer, one piece of shit writer, who uses this as a platform to actually boast about having a Hollywood career. I also have a career in film and TV, and AIDS is very prevalent in those areas. Yes, in my successful Hollywood career, there's a lot of AIDS. Absolute arsehole. The good thing is he no longer has a Hollywood career after being exposed for being a giant racist. And that is why he has come crawling back to comics to do sequels to stories he wrote decades ago. Other than that short testimony from him, this issue executes a sad story very adeptly. I'm far less invested in the subplot, but the main stuff with Jim Wilson is tragic and never makes a joke out of his condition. I'm glad Dale Cooper didn't draw this one. This issue is a perfect sort of somber story that doubles as a tool for awareness. The Jim Wilson strand never feels like a public service announcement. It feels like a very emotional drama story involving a character's death and dealing with it. I hope David Peter was proud of this story. He deserved to be. I think I will give this a full-blown 7 thumbs up.